Okay, 3, 2, 1. I screwed up already. I wasn't on the thing. Okay, let's try that. I had the wrong tab open.
Yay!
Yay! Okay. Hello friends, welcome back to another exciting episode of Creative Spark. I am your host, Kaiju Kiriyama, and I'm very excited to see you all here today again. Welcome back. I hope you've had a wonderful time since we last saw you. Go ahead and leave a comment of something you achieved this week. And you know what? I'm proud of you for making it through the week. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of chatting with comic artist and writer extraordinaire, Kristen Kiomall-Evans. Kristen is the creator of 12 of Magic and Muses, a passion project hosted online and free to read. I will link the comic in the description, and I highly recommend that you go check it out. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
I'm so glad you could make it today. But let's just dive right into this interview. So first off, before I get too much, ahead of myself, please tell our audience about your comic.
Oh, okay. So I make the comic of Magic and Muses, 12 of Magic and Muses. It's a webcomic that's currently free online at xiicomic.com. It updates right now 4 times a week, and then it'll be updating 6 times a week starting next year. So it's a webcomic about magical girls fighting militarized conspiracies with mischievous monsters. So basically our main protagonist, Willow, is busy trying to stop the school bully from beating up her best friend, and in the process is given a magical necklace. And she basically has no idea how to use it. So rather than a typical magical girl show where they're just like, oh, hey, here's your mascot, and he's going to tell you what your main plot is, rather it's about these girls who get these necklaces, and it starts to spread like an infection, but there is no one to tell them what to do. So they just kind of bumble around, trying to keep it hidden from the staff, while at the same time, also trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And results have varied. So I really enjoy it. It's about 1,000 pages. Right now there's 500 pages up on the website. Mm-hmm. So it'll be finishing in the next 2 years. It's all scheduled and planned out, but yeah.
It's very good. It's very good. I really enjoy it. You're welcome. So I hope so. You're working on it. I love that this is a magical girl series set in a boarding school. It has flavors of all the magical girl anime we grew up watching in the 90s, as well as that not quite Buffy, but still high school drama teen show feel. How do you balance the drama and the action? And did you draw from any of your lived experiences when writing these characters?
I think every author has characters that represents different parts of themselves. For instance, there's lots of stuff that my characters are much smarter than me at. So they either contain most of my anxieties or most of my admirations, and that kind of thing. So while they are not me exactly, they are like parts of me that I just kind of like stretch and put this like silly putty over a doll and be like, oh, you live now. So that's the best way I can like play that question. Like, Obviously Willow is kind of a self-insert character because she is my 14-year-old girl fantasy. So of course I'm going to have this weenie little brown-haired girl get magical powers, because who didn't want magical powers at friggin' 16? I try not to say like I put myself into these characters because they're still like, abstract concepts of imagination, and they are based around my experiences, but I want them to be more than that. Yeah, there's jokes that we just like put our anxiety and our fears into our characters, and that's very true. So I will not deny that, but also I think part of the biggest things about like writing a lot of your own fears and problems into a character is the fact that if anything, you write yourself a story that gives you hope. So Willow is able to make friends, even though she has problems like associating with people. And, they're even able to turn around their bully character through blackmail, of course. But at the same time, familiarity, lets people get to know each other and that kind of stuff. So
You draw quite a bit of inspiration from Gotham Academy as well. Why do you think that teen superheroes, or just generally teen protagonists who get thrown into these magical and unexplained situations, lend themselves more easily to these types of situations and stories? And what made you want to explore teenagers in a boarding school setting yourself?
So I do feel like a lot of these stories, including my own, happen to be coming of age stories.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely like magic as metaphor for becoming an adult, especially in 12, because 12 does get pretty dark pretty quickly, especially around the midpoint of volume 2. So I do feel like, especially mysteries, there is this slow realization as you're growing up and you start experiencing things and traumas that were either never in your peripherals before, or you slowly start to realize everyone else's association with them. And I do think that's kind of really important, especially for teenagers to kind of understand, even if they're not at that point yet. Like, there's lots of stuff that I read as a teen that was like, I love people fighting in battle tournaments. And then, like, as I got older, it was like, oh, okay, so like this is more of like how to grow up and how to make friends, and like who can you rely on when you start getting into an adulthood and all that kind of stuff. So while I do feel like there's like this really nice like fantasy aspect to it, most of it is us re-experiencing our own coming of age.
So you already kind of answered this next question. So I'm going to change it a little bit on the fly here. It's a project that you've been working on for 7 years, and that's a lot of lore and backstory to keep track of. You already told me that you plan each story arc out in advance. So how do you keep track of everything? Do you have piles of notebooks? Do you have a filing system? How did you manage to, keep track of 7 years of lore and backstory?
So I actually didn't really know what story I was writing. I wrote like a bajillion first chapters that got thrown out because I was in first chapter hell. And the trick about getting out of first chapter hell is write chapter 2 and just keep going. What I actually did was I sat down and wrote a 12-point outline with Blake Snyder's book, Save the Cat. It's a book about screenwriting. So I took animation in college, and honestly, that kind of point blank, like, this is how you write a story, was actually way more beneficial just for the way my brain works than a lot of like full on out storytelling. Like, the hero's journey it's got too many pieces. I can't stay focused. My ADHD, it's sorry. So I definitely preferred the point blank aspect, and because it was very visually focused, it worked for me because I was more familiar with movies and comics than I was with literature and media. So look, kids, you don't have to write to become an author. So yeah, for as long as keeping track of it, I have spreadsheets. But yeah, so I have lots of spreadsheets, and I actually have this main calendar that essentially what I started doing is, like, originally I didn't have one, but as I slowly started to work out, I was like, okay, so I need about 22 pages a chapter because that's almost a standard comic issue size. And writing is hard, so I stuck to the lower number. And then after that, I just kind of like, with the pacing from the outline, I was like, okay, so chapter 1 needs to introduce all of the characters. So that's what chapter 1 will be. And then I like slowly like made it bigger. And then when I realized that I needed like 1,000 pages to write this stupid story because I'm dumb, I was like, okay, I will totally do this giant thing of work. And I wrote it down in a spreadsheet and said, yes, this is my massive checklist. I can do this. And somehow I did. I stagger how I do stuff. So like I actually had the whole thing written out in like a bullet point draft work. So it would be like page 1, what happens in 4 panels? Page 2, what happens in 4 panels? And it was like very, very fast. But I wrote 1,000 pages out that way and checked it off on my spreadsheet because every time I do something, I check it off. And then I feel super good because I checked something off the spreadsheet. So I fired all that stuff out in 2013. And I did not stop. So I was able to get the entire story in this really weird, really broken, really terrible trashy 1,000-page story. And I went, okay, so it's done. What's next? So then I would move on to scripting. And then as I slowly started to move out of that draft, I would be like, okay, so I've got 7 chapters done in script work. I'm tired of scripting. I have a story. I'm going to start actually drawing this stupid comic. So I started thumbnailing. And basically, like every 2 chapters that I would do of a previous step, I could do a chapter in the next step. So eventually it got to the point where I'm like, okay, so I've penciled out 2 chapters. I can ink the first chapter now. So basically to get like the very first chapter done with effects work, I needed 2 chapters to be rendered. I needed 4 chapters to be flatted. I needed 8 chapters to be inked, and I needed 6 chapters to be penciled, or 16 chapters to be penciled. So like by the time I actually got to the art side of it, a lot of the writing had been pounded out in several stages, because you don't just write a draft and then make a page. At least I don't. They change drastically between things. But the whole point is like the draft was like this big scaffolding of rope. And then as I slowly built the bridge around it, I could take the rope out and figure which pieces weren't working. And like, so it was a foundation I could use to build everything else on. And, you know, because I was working at like several different points of the story at each different stage, I was able to keep track of stuff and hide little Easter eggs. And like, you know, we think that writing is like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. What it actually is you just want to reach the end as fast as you can, and then just like be like, it's done. And then you just slowly start filling out the middle parts and building on top of it. And yes, you have to read your own story like a bajillion times. Yes, I'm project blind at this point, to the point where I can't read my own comic anymore because I know what happens, so the words do not stick in my brain. But that's 7 years. So now that it's finished, I'm starting to get the like little nostalgia bits, and I can appreciate it that way.
With your in-depth story in the world, as well as the rich background art and characters and fun writing and all the work that you put in there, there's honestly something I think for everyone to love in this story. But I want to know, what has been your favorite part of working on this project?
I'm going to sound really cynical, but the fact that it's done. I mean, like, honestly, like, I say that, but seriously, like, I have never had a real piece of published work. And honestly, I can't tell you what it's like to hold your friggin' baby in your hand and be like, I made this! Like, how did this happen? Did you see 24-year-old me? She was a mess. How did she do this?
And she did it. She did
it. How did you do that? So there's lots of stuff that I love my characters, and it's really hard to express the fact that like the journey is obviously where you get to it, but it sucks. And it sucks, especially as a webcomic creator, that's finished their work before they start publishing it, because I was like, oh my god, world, I have this story and it's finished and you get to read 1 page. And everyone was like, okay, so what? Am I supposed to care? And I was like, yeah. Yeah. So, could you, please?
Yeah.
So, I'm being very honest here, but like honestly, like I'm a nobody. I don't really have much of a following. Like, you know, I came in the days when DeviantArt was on its way out. But yeah, so it is a struggle.
Yeah.
And like, I'm so glad that past me had so much confidence in herself, because I don't know where that went. It's, you know, it was a great learning experience, and I've met a lot of really cool people. And like, you definitely find out, like, one of the things I say the most is like, you find out who really loves comics in this industry, because you do not pour your heart into something for a decade for no money and no recognition and not love it. Because if you're doing it for the other two things, who are you? Where are you finding this?
You've answered my next question. You just skipped ahead.
No, sorry.
It's fine. I was gonna say, like, what do you wish you knew?
Teacher's pet over here.
You must have had some stumbling blocks working on it for this long. So what do you wish you knew then that you know now? And do you have any advice for like new creators who might be starting their own journey?
I'm not going to be very helpful. Honestly, my only real advice is like, do whatever keeps you creating, because there's so much advice out there and it's very confusing. And a good reason why is because as an artist and as a comic creator, none of us really know what we're doing and none of us know how we got here, but we're doing it and something's working out, I guess. So that's the advice we have. And we can obviously, like, I can obviously say, I drew 900 pages of comic to get my story done. Don't do that again. I swore again. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
You know, I did all this work to do a 900-page story. Make a short comic. Make it black and white. You know, better yet, go into prose, because there is less work and more money there. Well, yeah. I know. I'm just saying, you'll probably have less carpal tunnel. You know, and so like I could say those things, but like that advice was there when idiot 23-year-old me was doing comics, and I could not write a black and white comic that was under 50 pages to save my life. It really is whatever keeps you creating. So if you made this big magnum opus and it's not giving you what you want, stop doing it and do another comic. If you have 50 million comic ideas, as long as they keep you making things, make all 50 million comics, even if they only have one page. Like, and you know, here's the thing is that you can plan for if one of them goes big and wants to go to print and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, like, it's really all luck and kind of a mix of like privilege. So it's really hard for me to be here and be like, here's some general advice that should work for everyone. But you know, it's especially comics. Like, the thing about comics is that like there's not a lot. It's very rare to get somebody who does really big in comics. And some of the biggest names in comics took like 10 to 20 years to get where they are. And you know, like Iron Circus will talk about how she takes, you know, it took her so long just selling copies of her own stapled back like comics together to get to where she is now as a massive publisher. But nobody sees those 20 years. They only see her as a massive publisher, right?
It's my signature question that I like to ask everyone. And it is, if there was one thing that your audience would take away from your work, what do you hope that would be?
Like, that's such a hard question. But I honestly just want them to have a good time. Like honestly, like I feel like I built a roller coaster and I want people to hit that peak in volume 2 and then just wow. So I mean, I don't know how to explain that in any sort of actual words, but that's what I would love. Like honestly, I just want people to come back and be like, holy crap, I read your comics and I finally read the last one and I did not see that coming. Because like a bunch of stuff happened in book 2 and I was like, what's everyone's reactions? And then I got like not a lot. So I was just like, are you not talking about it because of the spoilers? Because that's not very nice to me. I'm trying to build a hyper machine here, people. What's wrong with you?
So that's all the questions I've got for you today. Thank you so much for coming to chat with me. I hope you've had a good time. I've had a blast.
Oh, I have had a great time, honestly. This has been so fun.
I'm so glad. Before we go, can you please tell our audience where they can find you online and where they can check out your work?
Yes. So the main site is where you can find most of the stuff. It's at xiicomic.com. And then if you want to find me, for some reason, I am on Twitter too often. I'm at Batichi Kristen, BATICHIKRISTEN, on Twitter. If you don't want to hear my rants, you can definitely follow just the comic updates at XII Comic on Twitter. And then we also have a very quiet Tumblr for the comic. And it's also xiicomic.com or whatever.
I
Tumblr has.
I will put all of those links in the description, and I hope that everybody watching will go and check it all out and follow you on social media so we don't miss any updates.
Yeah, for sure. I'm also on Tapas and Webtoons, but
Cool.
everything is behind. So you have to go to the site that I'm paying money for.
As for me, I'm Kaiju Kiriyama. You can find me on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and Patreon as Kaiju Kiriyama. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you don't miss any of my updates. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody!